The Nazca Lines of southern Peru are one of the most awe-inspiring mysteries on Earth. Located in the middle of a dry and inhospitable desert, we find over 1,000 geoglyphs etched into the earth on a truly massive scale. Some of these images are over 1,200 feet in length, which is about the same height as the Empire State Building. And hundreds of these perfectly straight lines stretch up to 30 miles across the Nazca Desert. No one truly knows why these massive lines were created in the middle of nowhere thousands of years ago. But in this video, I'm going to share why the Nazca Lines contain a hidden code so advanced that it could actually rewrite history. And if you don't believe me, stick around to the end of this video because I'm also going to share why the Nazca Lines are linked to other ancient sites thousands of miles away, such as Easter Island, the Great Pyramids, and even Angkor Wat in Cambodia. So without further ado, let's get started. Hey everyone, my name is Jonas and welcome back to Cosmic Consciousness. In this new series, I explore mysteries that I believe can help humanity evolve and awaken to higher consciousness. Now, there are so many mysteries about the Nazca Lines, it's hard to even know where to begin, but the sheer volume of these lines is truly incredible. We've discovered over 1,000 geometric figures and drawings, and some researchers estimate that only 5 to 10% of all the geoglyphs have actually been identified. These straight lines that you can see here cover a combined distance of at least 800 miles. It's thought that these lines were created around 2,000 years ago by the Nazca civilization. However, we know very little about this ancient culture, which seems to have disappeared mysteriously around 1,500 years ago. The Nazca Lines were only recently discovered in the 1930s when pilots began flying over this region. And that's because most of these figures are so large that they're not visible from the ground level. As previously mentioned, some of these shapes are as big as the Empire State Building, and yet they were created with precision. For example, these lines carved into the ground are not just straight, they're almost perfectly straight over miles and miles and often deviate by less than a meter. How was this accomplished by primitive people? Even something as simple as making parallel lines would be challenging at this scale, not to mention the complex shapes such as this spider, which exhibit a high degree of symmetry. And to increase the difficulty, many of these shapes are carved in one continuous line such as this one. Again, how is this accomplished by primitive people? And this raises another question as well, because if the ancient builders couldn't even see the geoglyphs they were making, then why did they make them in the first place? I mean, what function did they serve? No one truly knows the answer to that question, and the purpose of these lines continues to be debated to this day. Some theorize that the Nazca Lines were created as messages or offerings to the gods above. Others think that they were sacred pathways used in rituals, and still others claim that they were created as an astronomical calendar. And many of the Nazca Lines are in fact astronomically aligned, which indicates that the builders had advanced knowledge. None of the explanations truly account for all of the strangeness found at this site. For example, I mean, just look at this. This isn't just scratching some lines in the earth. The builders were literally terraforming the terrain here in the middle of the desert. Only an extremely important reason could justify this scale of construction. But what is that? Here's a massive figure carved into a hillside, often called the Nazca Astronaut. And I mean, what do you make of this? This is just incredible, and it leaves me wondering, I mean, who were they waving to? This monkey is another famous geoglyph which you've probably seen before, but have you ever stopped to consider that monkeys don't live in the desert? Here on this map, you can see the territory of the Nazca civilization. The closest monkeys to this spot right here live hundreds of miles away in the Amazon jungle. Not only that, a team of scientists analyzed 16 different bird geoglyphs at Nazca and found that not a single one of them live around Nazca. They're all exotic species. For example, the hummingbird, the pelican, the condor, and the parrot can only be found hundreds of miles away from this region, which is kind of mind-blowing to think about. I mean, were the Nazca people really traveling thousands of miles only to return home and draw exotic animals in the desert sand? This is another interesting clue that the creators of the Nazca Lines had advanced knowledge that's difficult to explain. Now here's where things get even more interesting, because the Nazca Lines clearly link to other ancient sites around the world. Over 600 miles away in Bolivia, we find the Atacama Lines. These Atacama Lines are a complete enigma. We have no idea who created them, and shockingly enough, they're even larger than Nazca and cover an area 15 times greater. Supposedly, the Nazca culture had nothing to do with this construction hundreds of miles away in Bolivia, so then why do these constructions look so similar? Even further away, traveling to Chile, we find an extremely impressive geoglyph called the Atacama Giant. Another massive image etched into the ground in the middle of nowhere, which also appears similar in some ways to the symbols seen at Nazca. Historians tell us that these geoglyphs were created by completely different cultures that didn't even know of each other, but if that's true, then how can we account for the similarities at these sites? But the mysterious connections between Nazca and other sites around the world gets even more incredible than this. YouTuber CFApps7865 uploaded a video showing what happens if you plot out the major Nazca lines over the entire Earth. And amazingly enough, they all intersect on the other side of the planet directly over the megalithic Angkor Wat temple. Is that just an amazing coincidence, or was this engineered intentionally? Well, consider this. Here at the Nazca Lines, we find an astonishing geoglyph that looks like a mandala. This is just a beautiful image. I mean, I really wonder what the creators were trying to communicate through this design. But look what happens if we lay it out next to mandalas from the Hindu religion, which originally constructed Angkor Wat temple. Now let's look at some further connections. A Russian organization called geolines.ru has done some amazing work demonstrating that there is a hidden meaning encoded in these Nazca lines, because many of these lines point in the exact direction of other important sites around the globe. For example, this line directly intersects the Great Pyramid in Egypt, and this one points towards Easter Island. Now, it's easy to say at this point that this is all just coincidence. There's tons of lines here at Nazca, and of course, some of them are bound to intersect with other ancient sites around the world. But here's why this is not a coincidence. I'm about to share a phenomenal detail that conclusively links the Nazca lines to Easter Island. I haven't seen any other source online point out this detail, and what I'm about to show you, if you ask me, this is the final nail in the coffin that proves that Nazca is much more advanced and mysterious than anything we currently understand. But check this out. Here in Nazca, we have an image that's often called the parrot. It's a bird that has human-like feet, an arm-like appendage, and an oval in its stomach which possibly represents an egg. Now let's travel 2,350 miles to Easter Island in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. Here we find hundreds of the famous stone moai, and we also find carvings in the rock. And look what we find here. A bird-like figure with the same shape of beak, with human feet and hands, and an oval shape in the stomach. We can find this image in numerous locations around the island. You guys, this is simply incredible. It's really hard to claim this is a coincidence. It's basically a perfect match. But if this connection is legitimate, this alone could rewrite our understanding of history. And there's even more evidence to support this unknown connection between Peru and Easter Island, Because on Easter Island, there's an ancient megalithic wall called Ahu-Vinapu. This was built in a highly advanced style that just so happens to be an exact match with what we see in Peru. Check out this structure located thousands of miles away from Easter Island back in Peru. In both locations, we see this small keystone block that's surrounded by 4 bigger stones. And this is a signature by the builder. It's a fingerprint. It's an exact match. How can we explain this? Somehow there was advanced knowledge shared between these people separated by thousands of miles of ocean. Did a small society like the Nazca culture who lived in a desert sail all the way to Easter Island? Or did the Easter Island people come to Nazca and just start carving things in the ground? That seems just as unlikely. I mean, we currently don't have any good explanation for this. And what this means is that we're missing chapters from our history books. If you ask me, this is extremely convincing evidence that highly advanced intercontinental civilizations once existed on planet Earth who we now have no knowledge of. The secrets encoded in these ancient sites could help humanity open our minds and expand our consciousness. And here on this channel, that's what we're all about. Well guys, please let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Do you find this just as astonishing as I do? I mean, I really think that this could rewrite history. If you enjoy this content, subscribe, hit that bell icon, and visit me on Patreon to support this channel because we're just getting started here. So much love, thank you all very much, and I'll see you back here very soon.